This morning, our scripture comes from the book of Acts, chapter 26, the first 19 verses. This is the word of God for the people of God. Agrippa said to Paul, "You may now speak to defend yourself." Then Paul raised his hand and began to speak. He said, "King Agrippa, I am very happy to stand before you and will answer all the charges the Jewish people make against me. You know so much about all the Jewish customs and the things the Jews argue about, so please listen to me patiently. All the Jewish people know about my whole life, how I lived from the beginning in my own country and later in Jerusalem. They have known me for a long time. If they want to, they can tell you that I was a good Pharisee. And the Pharisees obey the laws of the Jewish religion more carefully than any other group. Now I am on trial because I hope for the promise that God made to our ancestors. This is the promise that the 12 tribes of our people hope to receive as they serve God day and night. My king, the Jews have accused me because I hope for this same promise. Why do any of you people think it is impossible for God to raise people from the dead? I too thought I ought to do many things against Jesus from Nazareth. That is what I did in Jerusalem. The leading priests gave me the power to put many of God's people in jail. And when they were being killed, I agreed it was a good thing. In every synagogue, I often punished them and tried to make them speak against Jesus. I was so angry against them, I even went to other cities to find them and punish them. One time, the leading priest gave me permission and the power to go to Damascus. On the way there at noon, I saw a light from heaven. It was brighter than the sun and flashed all around me and those who were traveling with me. We all fell to the ground. And then I heard a voice speaking to me in the Jewish language saying, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? You are only hurting yourself by fighting me." I said, "Who are you, Lord?" The Lord said, "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Stand up. I have chosen you to be my servant and my witness. You will tell people the things that you have seen and the things that I will show you. This is why I have come to you today. I will keep you safe from your own people and also from those who are not Jewish. I am sending you to them to open their eyes so that they may turn away from darkness to the light, away from the power of Satan and to God. Then their sins can be forgiven and they can have a place with those people who have been made holy by believing in me." King Agrippa, after I had this vision from heaven, I obeyed it. Thanks be to God. Cecil B. DeMille, the old-time director of such Hollywood epics as The Ten Commandments and Samson and Delilah, would have loved to have filmed the scene that I just read for you. It has a king and a princess dressed in all of their royal finery and pageantry. The Roman governor and all of his retinue are present. The captain of the guard and his men stand rigid in attendance, and standing before them all, an underdog hero in chains. King Agrippa is the grandson of Herod. Yes, that Herod, the Herod who ordered the slaughter of all boys 2 years of age and under in Bethlehem and the surrounding region. Agrippa's sister Bernice is his consort. Festus is the newly appointed Roman governor of Palestine. And coming before them is Paul, a man described by most accounts as somewhat unimposing man. He has been in jail for 2 years. He is suffering from a chronic disease, and yet the power of God is seen to be within him. It may be that one of Christ's disciples, perhaps Peter himself, had told Paul of Jesus' words to his disciples. "You will be dragged before kings and governors for my sake, to bear testimony before them and the Gentiles. When they deliver you up, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speaks, but the Spirit of the Father speaking through you." Now, here are Christ's words being lived out in Paul as he stands before Festus and Agrippa. So, Paul welcomed the opportunity to answer the accusations the Jews have made before him. He launched into the story of how his life was and how it had been spent persecuting Christians and consenting to their death until that journey to Damascus. On the road he was struck by a blinding light and he fell to the ground. And he heard the voice of Jesus calling unto him and giving him the charge to be Christ's witness to the Gentiles. It was an unexpected, life-changing, complacency-shattering vision. Here was God breaking again into the world to work his will and his purpose. And from that moment on, Paul had a companion that enabled him to face dungeons and swords, shipwrecks and chains. So Paul made his magnificent testimony. Wherefore, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision. It is the most satisfactory summation of his life imaginable. He had a vision and he obeyed it. Have you ever wished that God and God's purpose could be that startling and clear-cut for you? Have you ever wished for some dramatic breaking into of your life, of a splendid vision calling you outward and upward? The chances are that rather than wishing for a vision, you probably find yourself uneasy with that idea. Visions are things that happen to people who hallucinate, or to TV evangelists who suddenly recognize the need to ask for more money. Visions have a mystic or an oriental ring about them. But I am suggesting that we too have visions, perhaps not in the manner of Paul's, but certainly similar. I believe firmly that there are times when God flutters the curtain that is dropped between this world and heaven and allows us to see for one brief shining moment the grandeur of his purpose that he has for us. I believe he gives us a vision that calls us to higher tasks and a more radiant living than we have ever had before. May I suggest to you what some of those visions that you have had and what they are. You're bending over the crib of your newborn, wondering at the miracle of birth and the beauty of that life, and suddenly there comes into your mind all of the hopes and the dreams that you have for that child. You're realizing that the shaping of that little one's life is in your hands. You realize that their security, their integrity, their purity, their sense of worth in the world will be shaped by you for the most part. And what is that? But a vision for which God called you to be obedient. You dress your child for church and you realize that coming to know of Christ's love can be nurtured in Sunday school, but that any real faith, any genuine closeness with God will have its best chance if it's caught by you. Nothing takes the place of a Christian parent in bringing your child to Christ. And what is that but a vision to which you are called to be obedient? You stand on the threshold of a new job and see with sudden clarity an employer that puts their faith in you, a work that is worthwhile and a service worth rendering. And what is that but a vision which God has called you to be obedient? In the year 1497, a teacher, Trebonius, taught a class of 14 to 15-year-old boys in a school in Magdeburg, a small town in Saxony. And it was his custom as he entered the classroom to bow before his students as an acknowledgement of their potential, because he knew that they would be future burgomasters, doctors, jurists, and regents. And one of those 14-year-old boys was named Martin Luther. In like manner, then, a teacher stands before her class and sees before her all of those young minds filled with potential and realizes that upon her lies the responsibility to open their minds to the sheer joy of learning And what is that but a vision to which she is called to be obedient? A pastor stands before a congregation and sees not only faces that mask 100 hurts, but lives that need to be challenged to make more of this raw material called life. He sees the need to not only be their shepherd, but also their enabler and counselor. And what is that but a vision to which God has called him to be obedient? You sit in church, and suddenly the voices of the choir and the voice of the pastor fades, and you hear a still small voice calling you to walk more closely with him who bought you with the price of his life upon the cross. And what is that but a vision to which you are called to be obedient? You've heard the word obedient ring like litany through these words. But after all, what holier calling from God can we receive than a call for obedience? And what more wonderful summary of life can there be but for us to say, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision? Now you may be thinking, well, this is all very well for Paul or some saint of the church, but it goes beyond the limits of us ordinary mortals. But does it? Think about this for a moment. No one can say of Paul that he was the perfect man. He had a temper that sometimes got out of hand. He was impatient with people who didn't share his zeal, and that often made him hard to get along with. He had human prides and vanities that were not often brought under discipline. He often stumbled over the thoughts that he wanted to express, and the truth he saw was not always the whole truth. But to the vision, he was obedient. He never turned away from it. No trial was too severe for him to stand before, and nothing was too humiliating for him to accept. He went through tribulation. He went through exasperating Roman legal red tape. He went through storms and enemies. It was not perfection that Paul claimed standing before Agrippa. It was obedience. And all of this leads me to say, dear brothers and sisters of Chadwick Baptist Church, let us reclaim that vision that has drawn us as a church forward for so many years. It hasn't been a vision of overflowing pews and community acclaim. It's been a vision of the heart. It's been a vision of compassion. It's been a vision of loving with a Christ-like love. We try to convey to our area that we are a church with the heart in the heart of a city. And indeed, we are wonderfully placed in a great location here in Chadwick to be an ongoing, constant witness of Christ and his desire to embrace every human hurt. Haven't we dreamed of being a church that discovers new and appealing ways to tell the old story? Haven't we dreamed that we would come together in one mind to seek God's will and follow it with perseverance and faithfulness? Haven't we dreamed of being a church where men and women discover and use their giftedness for Christ? Haven't we dreamed that all of our young people would have strong role models living before them an authentic life of faith? Have we not dreamed that here wounded souls could be made whole because we, like Andrew, brought them to Christ? Haven't we dreamed of being a haven where those who have lost their way might find it once again? It's the most that can be asked of any of us, that we be true to our vision. We may lapse into mistakes and failures. We may not always accomplish the thing that our heart is set upon. These things are to be expected of imperfect and frail humanity. The question to be asked, however, is, what of our vision? When we have fallen behind, have we gathered ourselves and overtaken the vision again, remembering that the race is not always to the swiftest, but to the one who keeps running? If we have to look to Paul for inspiration, let us not do it for any perfection that he may have in him, but because he kept on to the end, being true to what he had seen. The same Lord who called him out is our Lord too. He gives to us sights unseen by other eyes. He raises before us the incredible possibilities of partnership in a high calling, and He asks that we try. I know, as a church, we're struggling right now. And it may seem like we are a ship without a rudder. We're a church that needs to be healed so that it can move forward. I've always found hope in the story of Jesus healing the 10 lepers, which Alex shared with us at the beginning of the service. They stood at a distance and they asked for mercy to be made well. And Jesus said to them, "Go show yourself to the priests." And Luke writes, as they went, they were healed. As they went. As they obeyed, they were made whole. As we are obedient to God's vision, so will we be. G.A. Student Kennedy, a British poet and pastor of another generation, once wrote that the time will come when all of us will have to stand before the Father, and He will say, "Well, what did you make of it?" And when that moment comes, each of us is going to have to answer with deep humility, "There were times without number, O Father, that I failed you, I failed others, and I failed myself." I pray then that God may grant each of us to be able to go forward and say, "But, O King of Kings and Lord of Lords, I was not disobedient to your heavenly vision." May it be so. Amen.